Do you remember that viral short film a couple of Pixar animators made back in 2015? Borrowed Time told the story of a cowboy mourning his father whilst reckoning with the guilt he feels for the part he played in his tragic death. Thematically, it's about trauma, suffering, and grief. It was pretty heavy. There are obviously sad moments in Pixar films. Up is particularly notable for how it deals with grief as a central theme, but it does so in quite a tonally different way to Borrowed Time. Up is heartbreaking, sure, but as a film it's ultimately optimistic, hopeful, and most importantly for a business like Pixar, accessible to family audiences. Borrowed Time, on the other hand, was, in the words of one of the directors, Lou Hamu-Large, aiming for something different.
The goal for us was to make something that kind of contested the notion of animation being a genre, and one for children specifically. We really wanted to make something that was a little bit more adult in the thematic choices and show that animation could be a medium to tell any sort of story.
This all sounds very different for a Pixar short, except whilst it was made at the Pixar studio by Pixar animators, it was technically an independent film. Over the course of 5 years, directors Lou Hamu-Large and Andrew Coates, whilst working on major films such as Brave and Inside Out, spent their spare evenings, lunchtimes and weekends creating Borrowed Time, although with one major advantage over other independent animated filmmakers. Being produced as part of Pixar's cooperative film program, which allows Pixar employees to use the company's resources to make their own films in their spare time, they had access to the company's world-class animation toolkit and render farm to create this short. It's unusual for an independent animated film to have this kind of resource behind it, and it's an interesting look at the kinds of films the talented people who work at Pixar could make if they had the opportunity to make something very tonally different from the company's brand. Okay, you know me. You're probably wondering, what does this all have to do with theme parks? Okay, so Walt Disney Imagineering, which is Disney's theme park design department, is similar to Pixar in that it employs a team of talented creatives who are limited by the brand in what kind of experiences they're able to create. There's some infamous outliers, most notably the extraterrestrial alien encounter, which was an attraction so terrifying that due to furious reviews from parents, it became one of the shortest running Disney attractions ever. But broadly speaking, there are many types of experiences that an organisation like Disney is never going to explore. But what if, like the Pixar animators who made Borrowed Time, a couple of Disney Imagineers teamed up to take their skill set from this company and use it to create an immersive experience exploring ideas a Disney theme park attraction never could, like trauma, suffering, and grief? Hey, please don't vape inside. The fire alarm in this apartment is really sensitive. Thank you. Sorry about that. So, Imagineers Jarrett Lance and Jeff Leinenweber have pretty impressive resumes when it comes to theme park projects. They both contributed to the Star Wars land, Galaxy's Edge, as well as various areas for Shanghai Disneyland, most notably the Zootopia land, with Lance being the lead designer on the land's anchor attraction, Hot Pursuit. This is a really cool looking blockbuster dark ride involving a chase sequence through the city of Zootopia. But, like the guys who made Borrowed Time, beyond the boundaries of their Disney day job, in their evenings and lunchtimes and weekends, these two Imagineers were working on something very different, an immersive experience called The Nest. And when I was in LA last year, I got to experience it for myself. There's intentionally not much about this online, with a strict policy against filming and photography, so out of respect for the design team, I'm going to try and keep my thoughts on The Nest as spoiler light as possible. Because it's so unique, it's difficult to describe, but I'd say it's an immersive walkthrough, meets an escape room, meets an audio drama? Which does sound very bizarre. The premise involves you inheriting the storage unit of a woman named Josie who recently passed away. Throughout her life, Josie was obsessed with documenting her life with a tape recorder. Equipped only with a flashlight and a tape player, you journey through her storage unit to find each of the tapes she recorded, each of which tells a piece of the story of her life, from her childhood through to her old age.
Why don't you start by introducing yourself to the world?
My name is Josephine
Carol. And this is my last will and testament.
The Nest originally started life in 2017 in one of the designer's backyard shed, but after a 6-month sold-out run, they partnered with an escape room company in central LA to open a permanent expanded version. The nest now takes place in a former 1920s storage unit building, and this location creates an incredibly atmospheric and dramatic start to this experience. The journey to the storage unit takes place in an old-fashioned freight elevator, and there was this great energy as we were excitedly chatting away about what was about to unfold as we journeyed up, before we got off, walked down a dimly lit corridor, and entered Josie's storage unit. One unusual quirk about the nest is they advise you to either experience it by yourself or with only one other person, and so I did it with my close friend Kat on the last day of our week together spent in LA, and I'm really glad I did it with someone I'm very close with and trust completely, because it was a very emotionally vulnerable experience. When entering the dark storage unit, you only get one flashlight between the two of you, which creates this shared, intimate experience, forcing you both to look at the same things at the same time. Unlike an escape room, you can't divide and conquer. And as they make very clear when booking and before you enter the experience, the nest is not an escape room. It definitely shares DNA with one, almost borrowing the structure and mechanics of an escape room to tell this story, featuring small puzzles which uncover each tape. These puzzles aren't even that difficult. It's probably as complicated as trying to find the Wi-Fi password in your friend's parents' house when you're too awkward to ask. Which, yes, did happen to me last month. Instead of being challenging, they're more a way to interact with the environment, giving you a sense of agency and discovery. There's also no frantic ticking time bomb to solve these puzzles and get through the experience as quickly as possible, and it felt like it took us a good 10 minutes to unlearn that instinct to rush through like we're in an escape room and slow down to enjoy the relaxed pace of this more intimate narrative. Finding and listening to each of Josie's tapes doesn't give some kind of clue or hint to solve things, but hearing each one is simply learning about a new chapter in the story of Josie's life. Even though this takes place in a beautifully designed environment, the heart of the experience is this audio drama. As someone who, as a student, made audio dramas, including an interactive one designed to be listened to in a physical space, this felt bizarrely tailor-made to my incredibly niche interests. Each tape is quite short, around a minute or under, so it has to be very efficient in its storytelling, but the way the audio is combined with the physical environment allows these to feel really emotionally visceral, like we're taking a journey back through Josie's memories. Lars and Leinenweber, coming from a theme park design background, are able to leverage their understanding of detail-oriented environmental design to create a physical space that tells a story. Okay, sometimes I'm a little bit skeptical about the way companies like Disney overuse the term story as a buzzword to describe the design choices in their themed environments, but here I do think it's contributing quite a lot to the storytelling of this experience. Because these objects in the storage unit are physical remnants of Josie's life, the environments are inherently personal and character driven, and as you journey further into the experience, the space opens up from claustrophobic areas surrounded by boxes into more of a dreamlike wander through her memories. There's a real vivid sense of placemaking in some of these scenes, in particular a Christmas themed room, which both due to the events in Josie's life at that point in the story, but also how the environment evokes our own Christmas memories, feels so wistful and melancholic. But despite the slightly fantastical presentation and parts, this is a very ordinary and grounded story. Josie's not a superhero or a chosen one, but just a normal person going through the heartbreaks and sufferings and loss that is life. In a similar way to Borrowed Time, the nest was at times dealing with some quite heavy themes and far darker, more complex tones than the experiences Lance and Leinenweber were creating in their day job at Imagineering. But what really sets this apart from most other themed entertainment is how much of a character study it is. I never felt like I've understood so much about a character through this medium before, and the intimate, introspective feel of journeying from moment to moment within our life meant when the story came to an end, it left me in tears. And when we returned to this freight elevator we'd been excitedly chatting in as we headed up an hour before, we descended downwards in a reflective silence. The nest was beautiful and heartbreaking and painful and magical in such a unique way that I felt really privileged to have found out about it and got to experience it for myself during my brief visit to LA. However, I do think it is worth noting the price of the nest. It costs $110 to $150 for up to 2 guests to participate. This is expensive, but it is worth bearing in mind this price is for something that, unlike pretty much all themed entertainment, is designed to be a personal experience. It's not engineered to shuttle as many people through as possible, but entirely based around what's best for the story here, which is to create this solitary environment. There's been this massive rise in popularity in the last few years of the immersive experience. And while some are clear works of passion and creative inspiration, many are clearly not. Like, obviously everyone heard about the infamous Glasgow Willy Wonka experience because it was so beautifully bad.
What is that? It's the end dog.
But I think it's illustrative of a wider, cynical, slightly lazy attitude that underpins a lot of these experiences, which, whilst not this wildly terrible, are still very mid. Last year, I went to a talk by a company that produces a lot of these so-called immersive experiences and other similar branded events, and it was almost depressing how cynically these were designed in order to maximise the marketability of the concept, with the actual quality of the experience feeling like, at best, an afterthought. I'm sure talented creators work on these, but when I went to one of their events last year, it did line up with what I learned at the talk. I thought it was overpriced, incredibly crowded, and whilst it had some cool Instagrammable moments, it felt almost strategically designed to be the minimum viable product of what fans would expect, with nothing really to challenge or surprise them. In an era where there are more immersive experiences than ever before, amongst the sea of offerings engineered to be the most marketable rather than the best experience, the Nest feels refreshingly pure in its sincere creative ambition. Rather than only showing you pop culture things you already recognise and pushing through as many people as possible for maximum profit, the Nest is designed to be an introspective, emotional experience that gives you something that feels totally unique. I like the look of the work Lance and Lynam Viba did on blockbuster Disney projects like the Zootopia Land, and maybe one day I'll get to experience the big budget thrills of the Hot Pursuit Dark Ride, but I'm much more interested to see what they create next. Notably, they've both since left Imagineering, but I hope they get the chance in future to make more experiences that push boundaries in the way the Nest does. Because, like Borrowed Time did for CGI animation, the Nest feels like it's broadening the kind of things that themed entertainment as a medium gets to create. Speaking of which, you know why I was in LA in the first place last year, right? Well, I flew over to go see this insane theme park no one has heard of, which for some reason is owned by... What did I say about vaping inside? I'll be right back. Why did you